Welcome to a live episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
Happy Tuesday and welcome, everyone. I am clearly not Joel Waldman, but I do know the guy. I'm his wife. My name is Ileana, and I am the COE, or the Chief of Everything here at STS. Once a week, I do a quick little takeover on Tuesdays, and today happens to be Tuesday. And welcome to Gigi. She is the host of Pretty Lies and Alibis. She's an amazing person, and she's also a very great reporter. She's a podcaster, and she does a lot of really cool things here on YouTube. She breaks down a lot of stories. Welcome, Gigi.
What's up, Kyle? Listen, I was a little late coming in here. I was just telling you, I got this fraudulent charge on my debit card. It was like tonedglutes.com. And I'm like, I don't have glutes to tone. This is a scam. So I've been dealing with the bank. Jeez Louise.
I feel that both on the scam and the no glutes. I feel you. Gigi, before we start, I do want to take a minute to thank everyone, all of the Alibiers that are here. Thank you so much. All of STS Nation, we appreciate you guys. Please remember to hit the like button regardless if you're watching here on STS or on Pretty Lies and Alibis. You can also comment and say really nice things if you think that we deserve it. Please also go to your favorite audio platform like Spotify and Apple Podcasts and give us reviews, not just today, but for other shows that you've liked. It really does help us with the ratings and with the chart. And I know that Joel would very much appreciate that. So just wanted to say hi and thank you to everyone. We appreciate you guys being here. Today's going to be a little different. I know in previous shows, we've only had a handful, if that. But in previous shows, we've focused more on one topic or one case. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to do a couple of quick little updates on cases that I've been covering, cases that Gigi's been covering. I don't think we have overlap there. And then after that, we're going to open it up to STS Nation and see what you guys want to talk about. You can ask us anything about true crime, about covering this as reporters, about podcasting, about specific cases, whatever you guys want to do. So it's sort of going to be a little bit of an update and then a casual conversation. Cool?
Sounds good. Let's do it.
All right. So first and foremost, it is a big day for Rust. So let's have Gigi start with that. Gigi's been following this. And if you guys don't know Gigi, you should, because she does a really good job of breaking down cases and giving you a full wrap of what's going on in that day. She does. How long are your breakdowns?
I try to do an 8 hours of testimony in an hour or less.
Yeah, which is awesome. So if you don't have 8 hours to spare every day, Gigi's your girl. So Gigi, obviously it was a big day yesterday. The state wrapped. And what's going on today? Do we think that Hannah is going to testify?
That's the big question. I almost think she has to. I think it would not hurt in this situation. Not ever usually advisable, but I think that jury's got to hear from her. I thought the state's case has overall been really good, but at the same time, they ended yesterday with Seth Kinney, who I thought was just like the hot mess express. It was not consistent. Cross ate him up, to be honest. Her defense attorney is so effective, Mr. Bowles. He's very good at picking apart, little discrepancies that comes out on direct. And for the most part, he has a very gentle way at Cross to where it's not super mean. Although a couple of times he sort of went to the dark side with some witnesses I thought didn't really kind of deserve the tone. But overall, a super good attorney. But I think ending that case yesterday with Seth Kinney was a big fat mess. So today I've heard they're going to do some expert witnesses. But the big question is Hannah going to take that stand? Because I'm just so 50-50 on whether or not this jury is going to convict. I think it's going to be hard to get a conviction in this case, to be honest.
Well, and Gigi, I know a lot of people who follow both of us have been following this case from the get-go. I know a lot of STS Nation is watching the trial live. But for those people who are new to it or haven't followed it as closely as you have, give us like a 2-minute synopsis of what's going on and what we've seen over the last couple of days.
Yeah, so essentially it's just this stems from an on-set accidental shooting. It was an Alec Baldwin movie. They were filming in New Mexico on this ranch that's been converted into an old Western town. I'd love to go just walk around. It looks so cool. But the armorer, Hannah Gutierrez Reed, very inexperienced. She only had one lead armorer job prior to Rust, and that was on a low budget flick, which Rust was too. It was not, even though Alec Baldwin's in it, it was a very low budget film compared to Hollywood standards. But the big part of this trial, I think, it shows kind of from the day of her hire. It just seems like this was not handled well at all for a million different reasons that led us to why we're here today. But ultimately, it comes down to David Halls, one of the first assistant directors, who's very much a big part of safety on set. They do the final gun check with him. Then the actor can check that to make sure it's safe if they want. But he handed that gun off to Baldwin from Hannah, who was on trial, and there was a live round. So Miss Helena Hutchins was shot and killed. Joel, Jesus Christ, his name just went out the window. Can't catch it. Joel Souza was also standing right behind her. That bullet went straight through her, hit him in the shoulder, and she succumbed to her injuries. She's also facing some other charges not being brought forth in this trial for like tampering with evidence. She is alleged to have handed a baggie of cocaine off to another crew member the night of the shooting, told them to hold it. Yesterday, her defense said, yeah, it could have been powdered sugar. I'm like, look, that one time I was in high school and my parents found a bag of green stuff in my room and I said, this is oregano. And they were like, girl, we were hippies. We know it was in that bag. But I think it's been a strong state case so far. I'm just curious, honestly, it's a man-heavy jury, 7 men, 5 women, all the alternates are men. Are you going to have that sort of mindset of this poor girl, very new in the army, go head-to-head with Alec Baldwin, who kind of has a reputation for being a bit on set? Is she going to get some sympathy there? I don't know. My listeners are divided. I mean, 50-50. The buck stops with her. If she didn't think she could handle the job, she should have walked away. The other hand, there were so many things that were negligent leading up to the shooting that a lot of people feel it's not just on her. So that's kind of where we're at. State takes over today, and they're just getting started. If they have yet, sometimes they run a few minutes late. But curious to see what the state puts up. In the next few days. I've heard closings are expected Thursday, so we could have a verdict Friday. Although I think this could go a few days. I think you might have some people that are just unsure.
And I think you meant defense starts and picks up today. The state rep and the defenses.
That's right. Yeah. The defense picks up today. Sorry. It's been really late because having a trial that's 2 hours behind me, it finishes late. By the time I get my notes ready, record, and then 3 hours to edit, it's been 2 a.m. days for me a lot. So I'm ready for this to wrap up.
I feel you. And for full disclosure, we were speaking 12 hours ago, Gigi and I. So pretty much we never sleep.
No. Not much.
So Wendy has this comment. I keep coming back to she loaded the gun. I know that's what a lot of the comments keep saying. They're like, regardless of everything that we've seen, the witnesses, people keep saying that she loaded the gun. It was her job. It was her responsibility. She should have checked. What are your thoughts on that comment? And also, what are your thoughts on the likability or not likability of Hannah? And I realize that obviously in any court case, jurors are looking at the evidence that's presented, especially in a case like this. But I do think, at least in other cases that we've recently seen, people come in with their own judgment of what's going on. And so I'm wondering, like, what is the courtroom vibe? What are people thinking? What are people feeling?
I really haven't had contact with anybody who's sitting in there. I'm very curious because, Hannah definitely is one of those that her facial expressions can look a little smug or, just she kind of looks almost inconvenienced to be there. And I try not to judge on that because, regardless of the situation, I don't think she is an evil person who meant for this to happen. And so she's dealing with all this stuff internally of somebody's dead, somebody's injured because of her negligence. But I think that it's just been consistent. The only couple of times I've seen any emotion was when the medical examiner testified. And then when they had the armorer of 30 years on set, on the witness stand, you could tell that like the way he was rattling off these facts and the way he just knew his stuff. It almost felt to me like you could see the inadequacy she was feeling, just did not have that smug sort of better than you look. I think that a lot of people have interpreted And so it was interesting with those two witnesses out of all of them to show that emotion. But even more when the armorer was on, I think, her dad was such a and is such an icon in the armorer industry, Del Reed. I mean, he's done all the big westerns like Tombstone. He was the go-to guy for these kind of movies. And I think walking in his shadows, she felt she had something to prove. And maybe that she would just walk on that set and be as good as him. Was that her downfall? Some of the cast and crew that were interviewed in police with police right after the incident said she sort of had a smugness about her on set, sort of my dad's Thel Reed. And, was that her downfall of not asking for help, feeling like she could do it all? It's a lot of things, but I do think her facial expressions, if the jury's been watching or something, that they'll have to figure out for themselves. Is it that she's smug and is inconvenienced to be here? Or is it just one of those things where she isn't she doesn't know how to project her emotions on her face that she's feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also, again, I haven't watched a lot of it for full disclosure. I've been following some other trials, but from the moments I've seen, I also think it's the fact that like she's so physically uncomfortable, she's insecure, she's young. There are so many things going on that I definitely think that can come off and give a totally different vibe. And sometimes that, I mean, maybe she is smug, but I think it's a combination of things. Also, Gigi, just to clarify, and I could be off here. That's her stepfather, right? And did she recently pick up his last name?
Um, I don't know if she recently picked it up. I have heard maybe that's her stepdad or her adopted dad. He's a bit older, to have a twin. Well, I mean, these days it's not a big deal, and I don't care how old you are when you have kids, as long as you're adults. But I think he's like 81, so it could be a step parent situation. But I think that he's been around a lot of her life because she talks about growing up on movie sets with him. So I don't think it's a new thing, as far as
Okay.
him being her dad. And I think that's who she considers her dad. So.
Okay, cool. Hey guys, please ask some questions here. We're gonna go through a couple of different cases and give you guys some updates. I'm seeing comments, but not that many questions. So please feel free to ask us some questions. I think I saw one or two here, so don't mind me as I scroll out loud. Okay, and Gigi, do we know who's gonna take the stand today?
I don't. They were a little bit late starting today, so it probably started just as we did. So I'm not sure who, but I've just heard that the defense is going to bring some expert witnesses as their own on stand, and then of course, whether or not Hannah goes. I mean, they could throw up first. I don't know, but probably if they do, would save her for last. I would think.
And what is your overall feeling of the trial so far? What do you think is going to happen?
I've had a lot of people ask me this, and I just don't know. I think it's just going to come down to that jury. Is there going to be one or two? And I believe, don't quote me on this, but from what I've read from the law, of the 12, only 10 have to agree for a verdict. So it's just going to be a matter of, are you going to have a few on there who really feel like this was doomed from the beginning, hiring her when she's not qualified? Is that going to creep in to where ultimately the final question is, was it her responsibility to make sure that gun she handed over to the assistant director was safe to use? And, we saw some video throughout the trial, some photos. There was one video shown yesterday of a scene being turned around really quickly. And Baldwin's like, or somebody's yelling at her to get more rounds. She had this fanny pack, which the armorer that testified that was a veteran said, like, you can't keep it organized like that. But she's really quickly grabbing into that fanny pack and just grabs a handful of rounds and passes them off to somebody and didn't even rattle check them to make sure they're dummies. So you see just with these little things and then what's been testified to, how unfortunately this was an accident waiting to happen, and it did. I just think that it's going to depend on if the jury truly sees the charge for what it is, which is involuntary manslaughter. She didn't mean for Miss Hutchins to get killed, but she did. And was that because of her negligence? Or are they going to kind of play the pity party thing and say, oh, they say she's so young. Well, she's 24. She's an adult. Like my mom had 2 kids when she was 24, So I think it's just going to be, is there going to be a few that have that sympathy, feeling like she was the scapegoat when a lot of other people really should have got that involuntary manslaughter charge other than Hannah? Because we know David Halls pled guilty to negligent use of a deadly weapon He got 6 months probation. That's already over. It ended in October. So I think one thing that could work against her is him admitting the guilt on the stand and saying, absolutely, 100%, I was negligent. It led to her death. So why should Hannah be excused if he took his lick and took his charge?
Well, and also, obviously, in July, that's gonna be the moment everyone is really waiting for and watching. That's when Alec Baldwin goes on trial, and, we were talking about this yesterday, Gigi. A lot of people are waiting have been waiting for this even before this incident even happened, this fatality. Um, People are not a fan of Alec Baldwin, so it's gonna be interesting, and while we haven't covered this trial, I'm sure Joel will probably wanna cover that trial. I know Joel had some run-ins with Alec Baldwin himself when he was a reporter in New York for all the things Baldwin always did. So, that's
Have you
definitely
heard
something that we're gonna be keeping an eye on.
have you heard his he made some phone calls to the lead detective in this case, and this is not like a funny thing at all, but it was to me. So he's on the phone with the lead detective and he's just talking, 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 and he's driving to Vermont with his wife and kids. And so he's just like in a rant about what happened on set. And he's like, hold on. In point 0.9 miles, you're gonna take a right. And then he's like, hold on, my kids are acting up. And then it was just like the most ADHD conversation I've ever heard. It's like, I can't believe this happened. Hold on. In a mile, you're gonna turn left. Y'all have to go listen if you haven't.
I feel like that's definitely on brand. He's an interesting character, and I think we're gonna see a lot more of who he is in July.
Yeah.
All right, let me see. We have some questions here. Gigi, was she qualified for that job in your opinion? This is from Tamara B.
Not at all. She'd only done one head armorer job just before Rust. Of course, there were no accidents on that set, but overall, too, I think it's an industry problem. I mean, armorers don't have to be licensed. This girl didn't even have her CWP, which is weird because, like, here I am. I got my CWP, and I used to be very anti-gun until the world got crazy about a year ago with, women can't go jog anymore without getting hurt or killed. But yeah, so I think first and foremost, it's an industry issue. They've really got to tighten those regulations and make it to where you have a minimum number of years working with firearms. A lot of these people are ex-military, ex-law enforcement. So you see with her, there's no licensing that has to be done. Essentially, it's word of mouth. And she got the job because of who her dad was, and the guy who supplied some of the rounds put in a good word for her. So I think no, was she qualified? Not even remotely at all. I mean, no, she was very wet behind the ears, as we say, and I think unfortunately that kind of led to where we are too.
I have this here from Andy School. COE, are you following this now? Because if you are, I'm more upset with her care than anything. Yes, negligence on set. Hannah most likely had mixed ammo, but that was an easily survivable GSW. So I've been following it I was very transparent with Gigi. I've been following it. I've been reading headlines. I haven't been watching the trial all day the way I watched Michelle Troconis. I know many of you guys are watching the trial all day long. But because of Troconis, I feel like I missed the ball, and so I was running a little late on this. So I am reading headlines because when I still worked for News Nation, I remember, when it was breaking news, I was covering it along with other reporters. And obviously, like when big news stories like this happen, Joel and I, we always read the headlines. We'll read stories. In this particular story, obviously the victim was a mother, and as you guys know, I'm a sucker for feeling for these moms who are constantly in these cases. And her little one is, how old is he? He's very young. I think he's. Oh, did I mute you? Hold on. Did you mute you? Let me see.
No, I'm on the
Oh.
my daughter's gotta be picked up from school, so I'm trying to arrange that
Oh,
while I'm doing
oh,
this. I'm sorry.
oh. Multitasking. All good. All good. Um, Anyway, so long story short is I am following it. I'm reading headlines. I'm reading reports, but I haven't been doing a full day-to-day trial watch like I did with Troconis. But obviously, I think when we do get to Baldwin, we'll probably take it live on our channel and do gavel to gavel, just like we did with Troconis.
Okay, I'm good
All right,
now.
I think Gigi's back.
Yeah, it's gonna be a wild trial because, it's, Yeah, I just can't imagine. It's going to be hard for him, I think, to sit there and hear these things said about him and not be able to say a word. So they may have to like put a shock vest on him whenever he starts getting squirmy and stuff because, and then the thing too, like you say, is his reputation, which I really don't follow much, to be honest. I don't read celebrity gossips. I just don't have time anymore. But I know he's not the most well liked celebrity out there. So, it's like it's going to be interesting because, you know, it, even though people may not like the guy, you don't want to see a case where he's getting, judged on his character outside. It's got to be about the situation. So I think it's interesting, but I'm sure they're watching this like crazy because this is a very big foreshadowing of his upcoming trial. And a
Well,
lot of people feel he's less culpable. Even people that don't like him, I've read comments saying, look, he's an actor. You have two people that double check that step before that gun's handed to you. Does it really fall on Baldwin? Then you have people say he pointed the gun, he had to have pulled the trigger. They charged him with this last year, dropped those charges, and then after the FBI did some testing on the firearm he used with a mallet hammer, whatever, like a rubber hammer, after he said he didn't pull the trigger, they did those tests and determined it would have had to have been him pulling the trigger. They refiled these involuntary manslaughter charges. So he got off and then he's back on. So I think it's going to be a really interesting trial to watch for sure.
well, and listen, obviously, in any case, I would hope that everyone is looking at the evidence and basing their convictions on the evidence. I mean, we just saw it with the Michelle Troconis trial. Regardless of what you did or didn't believe or how you felt, you have to focus on the evidence, and there you have to follow the law.
Yep.
And I do think it's going to be interesting with Baldwin because he does have it, and I'm not like a big like celebrity gossip person either. But Joel and I did live and work in New York. And I mean, he was constantly in the news there. And I'm not talking like, People Magazine, Us Weekly, all that kind of stuff. Like he was in the news because he was constantly pushing photographers, videographers, yelling, cursing. His wife was in like there was a lot going on as a family. So I do think it's going to be interesting because while someone is innocent until proven guilty in this country, he does have a lot of emotional baggage that I think a lot of people who have been following him for years are going to want to see him held accountable to a higher level than others. So that's where
Yeah.
I find it interesting.
But yeah, I mean, when you have the FBI saying, that there's no way this gun went off without him pulling the trigger, I mean, that's a big deal. And that's going to be, and then you talk about they're going to bring up the fact that he didn't do really the safety things with Hannah, and when he did, he was very distracted. He was on his phone talking to his family, that kind of thing. So it's just going to be, even though it's going to be a lot of the same in a way, I think that people are going to feel ultimately he pulled that trigger, pointed it at somebody, pulled the trigger, and she's dead. So I think it's maybe a little bit more of an uphill battle for him just out of the gate based on the facts.
All right, now we are going to switch gears just because here at STS, we've been covering the Michelle Troconis trial and we do have some updates for you. There were some questions here that I was trying to pull up. We're just going to go over this and then we're going to open it up for everyone. Let me see here. Oh, yes. Okay, so this is from Ollie. What's happening with Michelle Troconis contempt hearing and the bond situation? Great show. Thank you so much, Ollie. We appreciate you. All right, so want to give you guys an update. Here we go. So, for those of you who have not been following the case, I'll give you like a 45-second wrap up. Jennifer Farber Doulos was a mother of 5 who disappeared on May 24th, 2019. Never seen again. No body was found. She was killed. And police believe she was killed by her husband, her estranged husband, and his girlfriend at the time. His girlfriend at the time is the person you're seeing here, Michelle Troconis. She ended up going to trial. It was 27 days of trial, a couple of days of deliberating, 2 full days of deliberations. And then the jurors found her guilty on all charges. So what is next? This is Michelle Troconis's mugshot. Shout out to Patriotic. Not sure if you're here, but hello if you are. But this is Michelle Troconis's mugshot, and she is currently still at York Correctional Institute. So she has not posted her bond yet. I'm not sure if she's trying to and they're delayed, or sometimes even if you do give even if you're able to post a bond, sometimes it takes a few days for processing. So we're not quite sure what's going on in terms of the bond on her end, but we know that as of, I think it was 3 or 4 hours ago, she still has not posted bond, and she is still at the York Correctional Institute. On May 31st, she's going to be back in court because that's when she gets her sentencing for the charges. And she was found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, 2 counts of conspiracy to commit tampering with physical evidence, 2 counts of tampering with physical evidence, and then hindering prosecution. She faces up to 50 years in prison. So it was 3 charges and a total of 6 counts. And that's not it. She is now also charged with a criminal contempt of court. So what this means pretty much, and here you see one of her attorneys on the laptop, but for those of us that were watching this, we saw her often on a laptop throughout the trial, pretty much up until the very end. And what happened was that a friend of Jennifer Farber-Dulas's told the prosecutor that one of the sealed custody reports that no one was supposed to have access to was on Michelle Troconis's laptop, and that it was big enough so that it was visible to everyone sitting in the courtroom. So on March 21st, there is an arraignment for her contempt charge. This charge is a misdemeanor. And again, her bond, I think it's a bond for everything, is a promise that she'll appear. But obviously now she's in police custody with the DOC. So I'm pretty sure she'll be there regardless. That is the update, though. I did want to share it with you guys. I also wanted to let you guys know that that was the trial that we had on our STS second channel, Surviving the Survivor Trials. We're still figuring out what we're going to air, but I will share it soon. We're trying to figure out what to put on in the next couple of days. But if you want to go back and rewatch that, we do have all 27 days of the Michelle Troconis trial. We have the deliberations, and then we have a full analysis and a quick 8-minute video that we put up just a few days ago. I know, Gigi, you were already planning ahead for Rust at that time, but I just wanted to give that update to our viewers there. If you guys have any Michelle Troconis, here, just want to clarify. Lucy A. Forever is asking, did she make bond? So in theory, we were being told that she will eventually post bond, but she has not yet. It's $6 million. She does have to put down, I believe, it's 10% in cash. And then again, the processing takes a couple of days. I'm sure Gigi knows this as she's been covering lots of cases as well. Sometimes, I mean, it can take 3, 4, 5 days. Plus, she had the weekend. So that sort of worked against her. All right. And then
it's usually 10%. So
yeah,
that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. And I know even in this case, because she was charged or she was found guilty for conspiracy to commit murder, they usually don't even allow a bond.
Yeah.
But the judge allowed it. It's an unusual case. We spoke to several attorneys and they say, this is not protocol. Usually you're denied bond. So they think she's good for it, and I guess we'll see what happens. So far she's still in custody, but we'll keep you guys updated. And if you guys hear of anything, per usual, just let us know. And
I want to add too, I've put in for some more Donna Adelson Sheriff's Office records, so I'm hoping to get those back. And we had talked about getting the getting that transport video of Donna from Miami up to Tallahassee, but I think for now I'm going to hold off. I would rather get the phone calls, to be honest with you. I think, if I don't want to put out the money for this and it's just like 8 hours of her bobbing along down the highway, you know what I mean?
Yeah. We were talking about that yesterday, and I wish we could almost have like a preview of what it is, because it obviously takes a lot of money to file for that information, and then it costs a lot of money. It takes a lot of time, and then it costs a lot of money to get these various files, which Gigi is obviously amazing at doing, and we are very, very grateful for all of her hard work. But I just don't know if it's worth it, or if eventually they'll release it and it might just be easier then.
Yeah, and I'm going to double check too on some new calls. I'd heard there was about 100 hours post arrest, so trying to see what the deal is with those. I would just much rather put the money into that, because if she's in transport, it's going to be, maybe like an hour of her just like looking out the window, probably realizing that she'll never be on the other side of a prison bus again. So I would just much rather hear the juicy details in the calls with Loose Lips 1 and 2, Charlie and Donna. Man, they can talk. I swear to God.
I mean, I'm waiting for that. Yesterday when we were talking about it, I was like, yes, the second you get any more tapes, let me know, because I'm fascinated to see what else is said, because so much is said. Um, I mean, it's shocking how much they've discussed, and I'm very, very interested to see what else is discussed. And as you guys know, or maybe you don't know, Charlie was moved. This is his mugshot that we've had now for, what is it, a few weeks? I feel like we've
Yeah.
had a couple of weeks now. But if you guys are not aware, he was moved to a new prison. It's the Columbia Correctional Institution. If you have not watched Joel's show from last night, it's worth a listen. It's long. It's 2 hours. But they do a full like breakdown of what prison life is like, which I know we've done this before, but this is fascinating because we had a warden who was on, and I thought he was very, very insightful. It's one thing to hear from the inmates. I feel like we always know what they're going to say, but it was interesting because we had a correctional officer on, or a correction officer on, and a warden on. And I really do think they were able to give a lot of interesting information. And hopefully Joel has them on again and does what he did yesterday, but from the women's side. But definitely check that out. But here's some information. It is one large compound, but it functions as two. There's the annex and there's the main building. There are a total of 3,000 inmates. And people were asking, are there Latin kings in this new prison? And the answer is yes. I was looking up last night while Joel was doing the show, and there are a handful of really big guys who are high up in the Latin King gangs who are there, who were recently in the last 5 years arrested and moved to this specific prison. So if there's an issue with the Latin Kings, they are very much present. They are very much there. And it'll be interesting to see what happens.
That mug's going to have to sleep with like one eye open. I'll just say that. Because
Well,
you think about it, it comes down to him really just lying and saying, "Oh, I was extorted essentially by somebody who's in the Latin Kings." Regardless of gang affiliations, those are families. You don't go inside and mess with one without like stirring the hornet's nest of all of them. So but I mean, I get he didn't think about that. He did not think about, what if I get found guilty? I mean, we know mommy had his backpack for the hotel for the night of the verdict. So I don't think in his mind he ever thought anything he said during trial or even on any of the phone calls or anything would ever come back to bite him. But here we are.
well, and that's the thing. I mean, we were reading about this prison, Joel and I, and you guys know Joel loves to read about prisons and talk about it. But the fascinating part, Gigi, is that again, like we always have this vision of what prison is like. We watch these shows, we feel like we know what it is. But to hear the warden and the CO talk about like the reality of what it's like and how tough things really are and how the gangs and people match up and how they really are divided. I mean, I just feel like that was like an extra layer of how real this is and how scary this is. Like we talk about this, and yes, for us this is a podcast, it is a show, it is a YouTube show, it's news, it's real, but we're distanced from it, we're not there. And yesterday as I was hearing the warden talk about things, it just made it so real. And that's like a level of creepiness, and like I was like, oh shit, like this
Yeah,
is
it's
like Charlie is deep in it. And not that he wasn't before, but I don't think anyone realized how deep in it he is. And now that he's in this prison with a lot of tough guys, with a lot of gang members, it's one of the toughest prisons here in Florida. It's not good. It's not good for anyone.
yeah, that's what you get for having an innocent man who just wanted to be dad to his kids killed. So but the thing, and that just kind of building on what you were just talking about, I did a series, A Glimpse at Life, where I have a contact who I've known since childhood who's in prison for life in California. And the one thing she said is any documentary you watch that has inmates on it talking, it's not reality. They put on a show for the cameras. So she gave me an inside look at all aspects of, especially being a first timer, never committed a crime in her life, her first charge, life in prison, and just the acclimation from being free to in jail waiting for trial. And then that acclimation into the prison system, which is completely different. If for Charlie sitting in jail a few years, that's not his reality. That is a different reality than actually just being a number in a prison. And it's a whole different game being played in there. It's a society within a society. And that's what my contact describes it as. Being in prison, they have their own banking system. They have, their own buddy system. It's just so foreign to me, but I'm curious to see how he fares in there. I mean, he'll probably just be the dude that stitches people up after a fight in the showers or the bathrooms or whatever, because he does have that little bit to offer as far as, medical goes. I guess he'll be yanking people's teeth out with like makeshift things. But yeah, I don't know. I think his mouth's going to get him in trouble because he just does not know when to put the brakes on. And I think that's going to be his biggest downfall, other than dissing the Latin Kings, which I wouldn't recommend to anybody.
No, no. And I mean, especially here in Florida, like that's who runs a lot of what's going on here. Like in South Florida, the Latin Kings. And it's just ironic because again, he was in a place that wasn't so prevalent with the Latin Kings, and now that he's been moved, again, he's deep in it. There is no and as the warden and the CO said yesterday, and of course, obviously Tommy as well, but they said there's no hiding. Like
No.
there's nothing you can do. Like the guards aren't there to protect you. Like the system isn't made to protect you. It's its own world.
Yep.
And when
And
you're
they don't
when
care
you're
about
there,
you in
you're
there.
there.
No, and the thing is, even if he's getting picked on or getting beat up, snitches get stitches. So if you rat on somebody who's been bothering you whenever they come out of solitary or you come out of protective custody, it's just going to be that much worse. So really, it's just he's just going to have to sit there and take it because if you get that reputation as a tattletale, then it's game over.
And yesterday they said they upped that and said in prison, snitches don't get stitches, snitches get ditches. It's like that's it. You're done. It's
Yeah,
over.
body bag. Yeah,
So yeah, exactly. So well, we'll see what happens there. We're obviously continuing to follow this, and as you guys all know, Gigi is on top of all of the wiretaps, the calls, all of that stuff. So as soon as we get any information, I'm sure Gigi will flag us, and we'll all share it.
definitely.
Okay, so now I want to open it up to questions, unless there's anything else you want to go over, Gigi.
No, and somebody did a couple of things I've seen scroll by. Somebody asked if they thought if I thought Donna would rat on Wendy. I don't think so. Mainly for the fact that it would take Wendy away from the boys. I think that Donna obsessed with those grandkids. Clearly, I would say more Charlie than Donna if it ever happens, because I think at some point Charlie's going to sit in there and get really bitter that Wendy is still free out there living her life in Miami, sunny beaches. So to me, it's more probable, I think, that Charlie would be the one to talk, not Donna, just on behalf of the grandkids. Then somebody else I just saw, what was it? Oh, why didn't they take the first discharges more seriously on the set of Rust? And that's a good question. I mean, there should have been production stopped. You got two in 1 hour, two accidental discharges. They should have stopped production, had a big meeting with everybody, a big meeting with Hannah. But that's the whole point that a lot of people are making, is that so many things weren't done to ensure or just reiterate the safety on set, that's why we're here. And that's why a lot of people don't feel Hannah solely is to blame or, should be even convicted of this, because it was a problem bigger than her. Like I said before, other people say, doesn't matter. She's the armor, hired to do that job. Somebody's dead. Here's where you are. So, but no, yeah, I don't know. What do you think about, do you think that Donna would ever snitch on Wendy if she has a
I
reason to?
I mean, doubtful. I think the family dynamic really plays a big role in that. And again, I think now that you have Donna, Charlie, and Wendy, Donna has to choose.
Yep.
who is her loyalty to? And I think at this point, everyone's trying to figure out who are they loyal to in this situation. And I think Donna has already done so much to protect Wendy, to protect the boys. And so if she turns against her, then everything was for nothing.
Yeah, that's a
Then
good point.
what's the point? Then
Yeah.
everyone's life is ruined for nothing, which everyone's life is ruined regardless.
Oh
No
gosh,
one
yeah.
no one is going back. Their life is essentially over. And I always say this, but it's true. The people that are forever affected and hurting are the children who are going to grow up with no family,
Yep.
or
100%.
all their family behind bars
Yeah.
and no father, and who knows what's going to happen to Wendy. But I think because of that, the focus from my perspective would be, how can I think the Adelsons are trying to focus on how can they keep Wendy with the boys. So that's why I don't think Donna would turn on her daughter, because
Yeah, that's me
then
too.
everything was for nothing.
Yeah, but
I
you
think Charlie's already behind bars. Charlie's already in a bad prison. It's already done. So I feel
right.
like if they turn on him, it's like,
Yeah,
well, what else? I
right.
don't think he can get any worse than where he is, where Wendy still has everything to lose.
Yeah, I agree. But I mean, Catwoman wants her so bad. It's like every time I've seen her on the stand in these trials, is like Catwoman is just biding her time. And the big question too is, if Wendy's going to get arrested, is it after Donna's trial? I've heard the theory floated. They should, I've heard they're going to arrest her and they'll do a joint trial, which I would pay to see that. Those two sitting as defendants, in different tables. But, you think about the whole situation, and after Dan was murdered just for nothing, they had about a year and a half of calmness before the bump. So they've spent all this time looking over their shoulder. I mean, just the reality is, an innocent man's dead, kids ripped away from their dad, his parents ripped away from their child, for really about a year and a half of being able to have the boys and Wendy in Miami without a whole lot of worry until that bump happened. You can't tell me after that bump anybody was sleeping sound at night. Charlie said he was at times. I think that might have been a little Xanax induced. But, you hear the panic in Charlie's voice after that bump. And it's like all that. You kill a man for about a year and a half of just, carefree time with them. And then the rest of it's been one by one, people going down. It's murder's never, there's never a good validation for murder unless you're coming up in my house at 2 a.m. intending me harm, then I will light you up. But for the reasons that they did and the reasons most people do, it's just it doesn't make sense. I mean, the thing for me is just that they just really thought they were gonna get away with it because they hired people they saw as beneath them and beneath society to carry out their dirty deeds, and just handed over some wet, moldy money, and we're like, "Good, we got the kids, he's gone." They never could have imagined what was coming.
Well, and the part that I find fascinating, being here in Miami, and Joel and I went to Charlie's house. Um, his he has two homes in the Fort Lauderdale area. We have a lot of people. I'm like, I don't want to say names or give too much away, but we have. I mean, Miami's small. South Florida is very small, especially when you're in the Jewish circle. We have a lot of mutual friends that she probably doesn't even realize we have. Um, I have friends whose kids go to school with her. I have friends who, go to the same synagogue. I have close friends who have done a lot of things side by side with her just because of the way the community is. And the interesting part is, none of my friends are that close with her. But what's fascinating about it is that even if nothing else happens, like it's not a life when everyone knows what has happened. It's not a life when you're so nervous, you're so uncomfortable, you can't be yourself. Even as a mom, like I think about that position, and I would never want my kids to be in the position that her kids are in. It must be very uncomfortable to
Yeah.
not feel like you can be yourself, like you can let your guard down, and to now see all of their life just falling apart. I will say, like, I constantly think about the boys, and that's
Yeah.
what kills me in this is they're so deeply affected, whether they realize it or not, and that's what hurts. And regardless of what happens, regardless of who is arrested, regardless of who is charged, their day to day is never the same. Like
No,
they will never just be.
no, and, one thing too about being uncomfortable, I remember Joel saying on one of your episodes that she's being watched at their sporting events, at the boys' sporting events. I mean, to have that weight, on you that was self-created. But at the same time, speaking of the boys, everybody did this for the boys, but they don't realize the burden they put on Charlie's son or Dan and Wendy's boys, that especially Dan and Wendy's boys, in that as they grow up, they're going to have the realization that the reason their dad is no longer with them is ultimately the adults in their life made the decision to get rid of their dad for these boys. That is a hard burden to put on kids at a young age that they will carry the rest of their life. They may feel guilty later. It's just this can cause so many problems because they're at an age now. They probably have cell phones. They probably can get on the internet and see the real story as opposed to what's been told to them their whole life. So God knows between their friends and their internet on their phones what they know. And you just can't even fathom how that is going to affect their development emotionally and in every way moving forward now that they're young men. Lincoln just had his bar mitzvah, late last year. I think Ben's
But
around
yeah,
15,
yeah.
15. These are boys that in just a few short years are going to be legal adults. And that's another thing too, is did Donna just assume that these would always be little cute toddlers running around and that they would never grow up and not need their grandma, which is something she touched in on one of those calls where she said, yeah, Wendy doesn't need me. The boys have their friends. It's okay. It's hurtful. You could tell like she's hit that point where they don't need her wiping their fannies all day. And so now you have kids ripped away from their dad, a life lost, a man who definitely would have gone on to do a lot of really great things in the legal world because they wanted a few years of them in Miami. I mean, I've always said Donna and them were rich. They could have flown their butts up there every weekend, bought a house in Tallahassee and seen them when they wanted, but they had to be selfish and they had to resort to murder. Blows my mind. Can't believe I waited so long to get on this case because, I went down that rabbit hole, still down there, searching, but took a break for Russ. But I'm ready to get back on Adelson too.
Well, and it's an important case. It really is because again, it's not over. And many of these cases, it's like they're all so complicated. You would think it's over just because there's a conviction with one person, but it trickles down and everyone's affected. And there are so many layers in the Adelson case, in the Tronas case, in all of these cases that we cover, in the Russ case.
Yeah.
And so don't worry, Gigi, buckle up. It's going to be a long road.
Yeah, I'm sure, it's a crazy one, but yeah, I'm just interested. I mean, you have Harvey still free, you have Wendy still free. I mean, you just wonder, they've got all these electronics. I mean, look, the woman could not hang up a call with her son at the jail. I'm sure her electronics are going to be a treasure trove of information for these investigators. Is that where it's going to get Wendy? In Donna's text messages or emails maybe to Charlie, is this where we're going to see Wendy's undoing, where they actually have the evidence to charge her? I think everybody's opinion is she had to know. But unfortunately, the prosecutor can't go with she had to know to arrest her. We got to have something that sticks in court because you can't do this twice. So I'm just curious. These electronics, I think, are going to be where it's at because, we got 20 minutes of her ranting and raving on a hot mic call, which I was there for. I mean, that was great.
Well, but the fascinating part, I think, will be even if she does, like, depending on what she says, will she still be willing to stand by her word, or will she then have to testify and explain what was said? So I think it'll be interesting. Aw.
Grandma went and got her. Grandma lives 2 houses up, so she was
Aw,
sick, so
grandma's the
grandma went and got
best.
her. Yeah. So we're all
Aw,
good now,
love
but
that.
yeah, so okay, I'm sorry, you can keep going. I just had to hug my baby.
Oh, no, I was distracted by the cuteness. No, I was just saying, I think it's gonna be fascinating because regardless of what Donna says on the new recordings, should we ever get them, um, if that's brought into court and it's evidence and regardless of what she says about Wendy, I think it'll be interesting to see what Donna says, what she doesn't say. Does she testify? Does she stand by any of this evidence that's coming in? Or does she say, no, Wendy had nothing to do with it? And does she speak up and speak out? again, I think it comes back down to the family dynamic. Obviously, none of us know what's going to happen until it happens, but I think we're inching closer to the reality, and I think it's going to be very
Yeah.
interesting to see.
Look, I'm gonna tell you right now, I bet her attorney has been like, "Girl, look in your little plastic mirror in your cell and work on those facial expressions and not opening your mouth like a catfish every time the judge says something," because that's gonna be her undoing is, her first appearance, I think, when she made it back to Tallahassee, the judge is like, "Let your attorney speak for you," because she was just like they would say stuff that was true, like we'd heard on the phone calls. She mentioned self-harm. And then when they bring it up in court, she's like, "Oh my gosh," and making noise. It's gonna be wild. I'm coming down for that. I don't care if I have to sleep in a tent on the courthouse lawn. I will be there every day for that trial.
Gigi, sorry, I'm listening. I'm just
Yeah, no,
scrolling
I'm just
down.
looking at
I
somebody
realize that
asked if I
this
think
pause.
that let's see, if, Chad's gonna flip on Lori all day long. I said he's gonna run her over, and then he's gonna back up over her for good measure, for sure. He's got death on the table. He knows they'll never be together again.
And someone was asking us if we are going to be covering that. So we are going to cover that gavel to gavel. I believe it starts April 1st.
Yep.
So we are planning on covering that. And hold on, this is a perfect segue, except I didn't put it in here. Tonight, I just want to mention that we do have a show at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And by we, of course, I mean Joel. And Joel is interviewing juror number 18. Hold on, let me pull this up. So tonight, Joel's actually going to be doing a Valo story. So as we get closer to April 1st and we see Chad going, starting the trial, we are going to be doing more Valo coverage, catching people up. I know a lot of you guys have been following it. We didn't really get into it because that was before we really started getting into true crime and all of that. But we are going to be covering it. And tonight, Joel is doing a sit down with Valo juror number 18 to discuss everything. He did write a book. They're going to be discussing everything in the book and what jurors were going through. And I find this particularly interesting because as we're sitting there, Gigi, you're watching Rust, but I just finished watching Tronas. I found it so fascinating just trying to put myself in the mindset of these jurors. Like, like it seems easy to just sit there and judge someone's life and look at all of the evidence and just say, you know what, they're guilty. They're not guilty. There's reasonable doubt. There's no reasonable doubt. But I really, over the last 27 days of the trial for Michelle Tronas, I really was absorbing and taking it in. And it's such a huge burden. It really is. I don't think any of us really take the time, or at least I don't. I don't usually take the time to sit there and think about it. So I think it's going to be fascinating to hear from juror number 18. I will say I'm sometimes torn about listening to jurors. I know that in news, Gigi, like when you're a journalist and a conviction comes out, the first thing you do and the first thing your boss tells you is go and try to get a juror on camera and, stick a mic in their face and try to get their reaction and get all the dirt. But I do think now that some time has passed, it'll be interesting to see what they say and what that could mean as people are preparing for Chad's trial. Obviously, it's going to be a completely different jury, but still, I always find it interesting to hear the behind the scenes and go into their mind of what was happening throughout the trial and what they're reflecting afterwards.
Yeah, and I think one thing too that we don't realize doing what we do, and then just as consumers of true crime, or I don't like to say consumer, but just somebody who's passionate for justice, is in the case of juror 18, he saw photos of dead children that are going to affect him in his own way for the rest of his life. That day that they showed us the crime scene photos of JJ at the autopsy and what was left of Tylee, which unfortunately you couldn't tell that was a person. Those are things that we pluck people out of everyday lives who choose not to see this kind of stuff as a career path or anything like that. And then we tell them it's their civic duty to look at these worst of the worst, and especially with children. There's just a different layer of heaviness when you're looking at the autopsy or the body of a kid. And, things like that we don't think about a lot. A lot of the cases we cover involve kids, but the burden that they carry going forward after the verdict is a big one that, isn't talked about very much, but very much a real thing too. And that's why I respect jurors, is because I know for me, it was just hard to see those crime scene photos there. I used to work in a morgue. It's not like a dead body or even seeing it was a new thing to me. It wasn't, but to know that that was somebody's choice to do that to a kid or an adult, it's always just so different than, working. I saw homicide victims in the morgue. I saw kids that were victims of homicide, but but I chose that career and these people didn't. And if they don't show up, they can get in trouble. So yeah, things like that, go unnoticed or just kind of are forgotten, but these jurors carry it the rest of their life. I keep in touch with a juror from Jodi Arias, and she still, has some struggles with the crime scene photos of Travis. Brutal, just absolutely brutal.
Well, and it's interesting that you mentioned that because it's true. Like, you obviously worked in a morgue, so you were exposed to everything that the average person is not. I did not work in a morgue, but I worked in news. I was constantly at mass shootings, at homicides, double homicides, triple homicides. We'd show up and the scene was very much still active, and we saw things that I wish we didn't see. We were at active shootings. Like, when you're in a certain career, you are exposed to that. You're putting yourself in that situation. When you're in law enforcement, when you're a firefighter, you know what you could see. But these people, I mean, yeah, they could be people who have no exposure to that, and now they're forced to sit through that for hours on end, and then to really deliberate. And I mean, deliberating, you're absorbing, you're rereading, you're really taking it all in. And I do think being a juror, and again, someone's asking, have you ever been a juror? I haven't been. But I do think being a juror is such a personal thing because it's not just evidence. This is something that you are living and breathing day in and day out, and then you make a decision that will change someone's life forever. Their family, their friends, everyone. I mean, it could change your life as a juror forever.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. I mean, we've seen cases where it looks like it's a shoe in guilty and it's not. And then, people are getting these jurors are getting death threats after like a not guilty verdict in a trial where people watching thought should have been a guilty or a hung jury. I've heard some horror stories of what jurors deal with after, if it's not the verdict that the public wants. But, yeah, I've never been a juror either. So
Super Planner Girl, hi there. How are you? She says it's such a heavy weight. They should offer mental health care as part of the civic duty. I hope they do. I don't think they do, but I think that's a great idea because, again, and I know all of you guys here in true crime are very familiar with these cases. And Gigi and I, even covering these cases, we are as well. But I think we become not numb to it, but we're just expecting certain things because we're choosing to be here. We're choosing
mhm.
to read this. We're choosing to look at the photos, to post the videos, all of that. But when you're a juror, you're right. It's
Yeah.
random. You never know.
And I think too, doing what we do, it's just so important to be able to tell that victim's story in a way that's correct without all the flair and all the speculation and rumor. It's a big responsibility, but at the same time, you find yourself getting um involved emotionally in a case. I did with Vallow Daybell, since I started covering this, I've gotten very close with Kay and Larry Woodcock, and they're like family to me. And so there's a little bit of a personal element in this case for me, I guess, that's different from other cases, but it does take a toll, with Harmony Montgomery's trial, which was maybe one of the worst I've ever seen in my life as far as what was done to that poor baby. I couldn't cover it as in depth as I normally do because the details were so disturbing. So I had to kind of choose to take a step back from how I normally cover cases to just not even watching like medical examiner or not medical examiner, but the testimony, that his wife was doing where he had her in the bathroom and just I had to turn it off. And so sometimes you do sort of take that step back because it's just day in and day out doing what we do. It's the worst in humanity. But for me, it's an honor to tell the victim's stories because sometimes that, that's the last bit of their life, that's going to be really in the news. What happened and how do we get justice? And then you have families that go on to do big things like the Petitos that have the foundation. Kay and Larry are setting up a foundation for in honor of JJ and Charles. And then some people don't want to do that, and that's fine. But then, they're all left dealing with this crazy loss under crazy circumstances in the public eye. You imagine losing somebody so violently and then you're open to being doxxed online. People look at your Facebook from 10 years ago and see one comment and say, oh my gosh, like you're horrible in the middle of suffering. So it's like they're dealing with the unimaginable, sometimes on a world stage with everybody watching every move. And I can't imagine.
Well, it's interesting. So last week, when the Michelle Draconis verdict was reached, we took it as breaking news. Joel hopped on, and then, like he does, he ditched me mid-action and was like, "Hey, good luck. I gotta go." And I joked, and I was like, "You know what? I'm not really a journalist anymore. I'm just a mom, I'm just a civilian." I was like, "I'll try to cover the news." And a lot of people actually wrote to me, and they're like, "You know what? You are still a journalist. Like it's who you are." And it's funny, since then I was reflecting and I was like, do I miss being in news? And I do feel like I get a lot of that out of here. But as I was reflecting and speaking to one of my friends who recently left news as well, I was telling her the only thing that I miss about news, I was never like the adrenaline junkie. And even at mass shootings that Joel and I covered together, I never wanted to like be the one to break the news and break the story. I didn't care so much about that. Like I was like, go Joel, like that's your thing. Go for it. I wanted to tell the story of who this person was, of what their favorite thing was like,
Yeah.
of what
Yeah.
they like to do, of what their mother is going to remember, about them, of what their room looked like, of what their favorite color was. Like I did like always to focus on the victims and to focus on who these people are and to humanize them
Yeah.
because I think that's why, that's how you make friends. That's how you meet people. You have a connection. And so
Mhm.
it's funny. The last couple of days I have just been reflecting on life and career moves and everything. And I do think the only thing I miss about news, which we're able to also do here, is that I was able to focus on trying to bring awareness and focus on the victims. And I think here it's a special thing on
Yeah.
YouTube and on the audio podcast where you can choose to do it your own way and figure out how you do it. And even here at STS, Joel and I are very different. But I told Joel, I was like, I would love to do more of an emphasis on who people are because for me, I don't like to read about these horrible true crime cases. I really don't. I'm not like a hardcore true crime person, but I do like to know about a family who lost their daughter and her story and how the family is coping and who the daughter was and what happened to her and how her friends are dealing. So for me, it
Yeah.
very much is like the human aspect and the connection.
And it's important because sometimes in true crime, unfortunately, the victim can get so lost in the hoopla of the judicial process, the defendant, the rumor and speculation that goes on, and it's a normal thing. But the beauty of like what we do compared to working for just an organization is that we can dedicate 20 episodes if we want to the whole story. We're not bound by time. Most of us are independent. We don't have bosses. So we get to choose what we focus on. And I think that in today's world, that's what people want. They don't want the 3-minute soundbite. They want all the details. And the beauty of that is you can really dive into who that person was. If there's family talking or if their social medias were active, you can kind of glance at them and get a good idea. But I that's what I love the most. I mean, I don't consider myself a journalist. I mean, I'm a podcaster, I'm a content creator, but I'm passionate about victims and the victims' families. And also, as hard as it is sometimes, justice and making sure the judicial process is working the way it should. You look in the Richard Allen case in Delphi, that scares me. The way this case has unfolded, it seems like this is going to be an appellate lawyer's dream once this goes to trial and there's a verdict, if there's a guilty verdict. So also what we do is being able to keep things out there. When a judge lets somebody that's had a third DUI resulting in death go with a big money fine and no jail time or 3 months, we can call that out and be like, who is this judge? Like, we got to stand up and like use our platforms for good too. And my big thing is after these cases, I tell you, anybody who abuses a child, molests a child, we should stop giving off good behavior. You're going to go to prison for a very long time if you hurt a kid, because we live in a society where the one who is victimized deals with the repercussions longer than the one who dealt it out. Some people, it's like you find out this guy that killed oh gosh, the name's escaping me right now. I'm sorry. It wasn't Madeline Soto. It was, gosh, it just happened. He was the tatted up guy, really that
Oh,
happened during Rust, so I haven't been able to focus on that too much, but
yeah, Joel was just talking about that.
this guy has a history of enticing minors, and it's like, why is he out? Why are we letting people like that back on the street when you've got people in prison who have nonviolent offenses serving decades more than somebody who hurts a kid? Like, for me, I wanna use my platform to be like, "Yo, we gotta change some laws. If you're found guilty or you admit to hurting a kid, you're going away." And you're not getting out for good behavior and you're not getting parole. Like straight sentences, no bending. Things like that, I think we got to use our platforms to make noise because we're seeing these kids every daggone day hurt or killed, abducted. And then you find out that the perpetrator half the time's got a rap sheet yay long, and some of those involve kids. It's like, what are we doing? You got somebody who, cheated the government out of some tax money, spending 12 years behind bars. This moron that's got nasty white supremacy tattoos and just like scum of the earth guy got out in no time for hurting a kid. It's just, to me, it's unbalanced. So don't get me. I'm getting off my soapbox. My neck's getting red right there. It's going too far.
No, but I mean, I do think going back to how you started this is that's the beauty of doing it here your own way is you can cover it, you can have these discussions, and I will say it is nice because you can have the time to allow stories to breathe, and we have Alibuyers here, we have STS Nation here, obviously. And it's great because they're so insightful. The amount of emails we get of people like genuinely who care about the cases and the victims and everything, like it's great. It really
Yeah.
is. I have
Yeah,
a
our
question
communities are all
here.
great. I mean, it's I feel like my listeners are family. I mean, I really do. Everybody's same goal, which is, learning about the judicial process, the curiosity about crimes and that kind of thing. But ultimately it's a big family of people who just want justice for these innocent victims. And I think that's really cool. It can get ugly out there, but it can get ugly anywhere. Just I don't like the social media drama stuff, but I stay out of it, so I'm cool, but, sometimes the focus can get so far off the victims, it's like, what are you doing?" It's like, whether it be just people who listen to true crime stuff or put it out, it's like, "Okay, let's just regroup, like, and get the focus back on the victims and telling their stories, who they were, what was done to them, unfortunately, and how we're gonna get to that resolution of holding people accountable, or in the rare cases, exonerating people who were innocent, you know? I mean, there are people who are wrongly charged, and the whole process is fascinating to me, and it'll never stop being fascinating, and when it does, I think when the focus becomes on more than just the victim, then for me, it's time to walk away.
Absolutely. No. And again, I mean, that's where I go back to like the connection. Even certain cases, and Howdy is asking why is everyone avoiding the Karen Reed case? But before we get to that, even for us, the way we choose which stories we do, like there has to be some kind of meaning or connection or reason that we choose to cover the stories that we cover. And I know at least for us, Joel and I have discussions about which stories speak to us. The Adelson story was something that him and that Joel and his mom very much, were attracted to the story of a Jewish family and, everything that they had experienced, the loss, and then, the cultural connection and everything. So different people are attracted to different stories for different reasons. I feel like I tend to be drawn to stories where it's like very family driven. Mothers are being affected. I don't even like try to do that. I didn't even realize I was like so affected as a mom until I started covering cases recently or watching them. But I do think we're drawn to certain cases for different reasons, and obviously everyone is drawn to their own, whatever interests them. And going back to Howdy's question here, why is everyone avoiding the Karen Reed case? I don't know whether or not you've covered it at all, Gigi, or whether you plan to. We did cover it initially. Then we backed off because there were some twists and turns in there that we didn't really want to get involved in. There was some YouTube drama that, again, just wasn't worth it for us because we don't want to spend a lot of our time focusing on fighting people on YouTube. We want to focus on telling good stories, on sharing meaningful stories with you guys, on learning, on challenging ourselves, on growing, on having like meaningful discussions on YouTube and on the podcast. But I also think what's come up recently is there are so many cases and so many trials that are all falling, they're all coming down at the same time, and all of them are going to court at the same time. So specifically for the Karen Reed case, I will, for full transparency, we did back off once we had some wild shows, and I'll leave it at that. But after that, I think for us, we're probably going to end up staying on the Chad Daybell trial, which is around the same time. So
Yeah.
if Daybell ends up wrapping early, which how long do you think that trial is going to last?
That's 10 weeks, I believe, they've put aside. It's a death case. Lori's was 6, so 8 to 10, I believe, at least through the end of May, so 8, because it starts April Fools, kind of appropriate.
Yeah.
So I think the end of May is when they're expecting that to wrap up. Then you're gonna have, mitigation. I don't think deliberations will take long. I think it's pretty much gonna be an echo of Lori's trial. We are gonna learn a lot more about Tammy Daybell's murder. That didn't really pertain to Lori. She got the conspiracy charge for that, but
Yeah.
I wanna hear more about his phone pings. Where was he at key times in the murders of these kids? And we know the attempt on Brandon, which is an Arizona thing. Chad's not involved in that. So yeah, between Lori's Arizona trial and then Chad coming up, I'm really interested about DNA evidence found on his property, because ultimately, they ruled that they had the one strand of hair with JJ's body from Lori, and that was it. You'll never convince me she was not in that room when JJ was being killed. But I think that we're going to learn some new things. But then you also, like you say, overlapping. We've got Billy Wagner in the Piketon Massacre case going to trial, I believe, next month. I covered George Wagner's trial. So it's like with that, it's going to be a repeat. So I'll focus more on Daybell, because me and Fruit Loop, my old co-host, we started I didn't have enough coffee this morning. Let me regroup that. So we
Start
started this
over.
podcast. We started this podcast on Valo Daybell when the kids were missing. We had our first episode the day they found their bodies. And so this has always been close to my heart. But what I like to do too is, like with Wagner and then with Karen Reed, I would like to do weekend updates where I sort of just pick up the best parts of testimony and do one episode for like the week, because I have followed Karen Reed and I have followed Wagner. But like you say, a lot of the cases that came on shortly after we started that we were interested in and did deep dives on, they're all coming to trial at the same time. And for me, it's just me. I have no help. I do research, I do the graphics, I do the editing, I do everything. So for me, it's like I get sad sometimes that there's not enough hours in the day, because there are 2 or 3 things going on right now. This weekend after Rust kind of goes into deliberations, I got to catch up on. There's been some murders, that I haven't even reported on that I'm interested in. So it's like it all comes down to, man, if I had infinite amounts of time each day, I'd be all over every one. But it's like I'm averaging 14 hours a day minimum in the studio.
Oh yeah,
So I'm
minimum.
just like, it's so tiring. I kind of hit a point about a month ago where I just was like, I'm going to do 2 a week. I can't function like this anymore. Got some sleep, did some housework, came back. I'm like, let's go. I'm gonna
I
send
mean,
my hair off to a lab and see if they can clone me.
well, it's a lot. It's funny. Last night I texted Gigi and I'm like, "Hey, I don't want to text you too late. It's 9 p.m." I'm like, "Do you have 5 minutes?" She's like, can I call you in a few hours?" She's like, "It's gonna be a while. I'm still editing." And I'm like, "Oh no, no, no." I was like, "I didn't want to bug you and reach out to you late at night." She's like, "I'm up all night." I'm like, "Same. Call me anytime."
Yeah.
But that's the thing. Yeah, it is a grind. That's worth it, obviously, but it's crazy because there's just so much content out there. And I always say it to Joel, I'm like, "Oh, there's this, there's that." And I mean, we're 2 people, and obviously we have Space Coast that helps. We do have Steve Cohen that helps. And all of our amazing mods who are here with us right now. We love you guys.
Yeah, thanks to my mods. They hopped on and I didn't even give them a heads up. So thank you guys. Love
Yeah,
y'all.
yeah, yeah. I know. Same with me. It's just been one of those weeks of just trying to get things together last minute. But yeah, no, I do think it's fascinating that there is so much to cover, and I wish we could cover it all because there are so many cases that really do deserve the time and the energy. I'm actually speaking to one of our STS Nation members. I'm not going to say her name, but I'm reaching out to you shortly. And she was recently involved and has a personal connection to a case. And it's like there are so many of these cases, big or small, of so many victims that need that light shed on the story, that need that awareness. Even last Friday, Joel was doing a story on Mercedes Vega, and her mom popped into the chat, and all of a sudden, she was like sharing information about that. So I think we're going to be speaking with her as well. But it's just, there are so many cases, and I really wish we had the time to do them all. But we do
Yeah.
try to get to the ones that we can get to.
It's tough because I get a lot of family members that have cold cases that reach out, and I have a huge list that every time somebody inboxes me, I write down their name, the name of their relative, and then you just feel bad because it's like you wanna just be up 24/7 to tell all their stories, and it's just not possible. So it's like I always have that guilt feeling when I can't do a case that somebody's asked me to do because, it's just I have 3 kids. I take care of my grandma who's almost 90, so there's just a lot going on. But I'm grateful. Sometimes like the Russ trial for me was a little bit of a selfish trial. There were definitely other cases that would appeal more. Somebody said, "Oh, it's the new money grab trial." I said, "Look, first of all, I ain't in this for the money. And if I could show you what we make every month compared to the hours we put in, it is not, I'm not living in no big YouTuber house or nothing like that." But I said, look, if you want to compare the numbers that this has gotten on YouTube compared to Adelson, I could have stuck with Adelson and put out an episode every day if it was about the money. It's like I get offended when people say that because I'm like, first of all, um, I've had some months that, have definitely not been profitable. It's just the name of the game. You're in business. We have to pay for websites, for graphics. We have to pay to host the podcast. You have to pay all these fees. And then I got kids, and it's like, they talk about kids being cute and you should have a few. They don't tell you when they get to be teenagers, like they want cars and stuff. So I just always get cracked up when people are like, "You're a money grab." I'm like, okay, somebody done grabbed my money and ran off. But if it is about the money, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. The bottom line is I get to do what I'm passionate about at home in my PJs most of the time because y'all ain't seeing what I got on below this shirt. I got my boxers on. I'm comfy. So
Although,
I
Gigi,
can't complain.
I will confess, I showered for you.
Look
I
at you.
dried
You
my
look
hair.
good,
I mean,
girl.
I'm wearing like an outfit today. Joel was like, "Where
Yeah,
are you
you
going?" I'm like,
live at 12?
I'm like, "I'm meeting Gigi online."
Look, Imma tell you
I
till I started
I
doing this.
never ever get dressed.
Look,
I
Imma
mean,
tell you, I
I
never
schedule
wore
it, but
makeup until this because I'm a tomboy, have been since I was knee high to a grasshopper, and so when I was doing, Murdaugh, so my good friend Kathy Russin is an executive producer at Law& Crime. We met way back in the Jodi Arias day, kept in touch. One day I'm getting back to the hotel, and she starts shooting me all these YouTube tutorials on how to do makeup. She's like, "Girl, your eye stuff ain't blended in," and it's just like we had the best laugh because, you're talking about getting ready. Like, I never put makeup on before this podcast, and she, she was like, "Girl, you got to blend. We were lacking in that department." So, yeah, so this has changed me in a lot of ways. I mean, normally I'm in a Pink Floyd shirt like 24/7. So, I had to go buy a whole new wardrobe when I did Murdoch. So I was like, I don't think they're gonna like a Stevie Nicks shirt on Law& Crime. You know, it's all
Well,
right. I'll change in those ways, but
let me read this question here. So, I'm fairly new to both of your fabulous channels, so my question may be outdated. Did either of your channels cover the Sarah Boone suitcase murder? So, we have not covered it yet. However, when it goes to trial, we do plan on covering that. That's on our list. I have like a big calendar that I'm filling out, even though every like 3 days I have to pencil things out and re-put them in because the calendars are constantly changing. But that is on our list of something that we want to cover, but it's not coming up for quite some time. And honestly, a lot of the big cases are being pushed out. And I don't know if that's always been the case, or I know like during COVID, trials were being delayed, things were going much slower, but I feel like since then it's just always been like we never went back to normal. Now I just feel like the whole process is very slow. So all of these trials are taking so long. Like the Koberger case.
Yeah.
I mean, they said that they wouldn't be ready till what was it, spring 2025, if
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, like
So
Jesus is gonna return before that guy ever goes to trial.
yeah, I mean it's a long time. And that's assuming they don't keep pushing it back. So
But the thing is, I would rather them take their time and get their case together, and if he's guilty, put the facts forward instead of rushing it, and then potentially you ain't got your stuff together. And there's 4 victims. I know that the families wanna get this over. It is a weight constantly on them. At the same time, it's such a complex case, you gotta make sure you're getting everything in a row so that if he is convicted, it doesn't come back. That conviction is sealed, done, like, bye-bye. So, for me, I'm okay with waiting, but I do see what you're saying. It's like with the Billy Wagner, gosh, they were arrested in 2000, is it 19? 16, 17, maybe like 2000, no, 2016. Gosh, my dates are wrong, but he's been in jail for years and he's just now coming to trial. So like Chad Daybell, arrested in 2020, almost 4 years later, he's
yeah,
going to
that's a long
trial. But you
time.
got multiple victims, convoluted cases with a lot of players. I'm all for like take your time and present your best case, and let's make sure we're convicting the right person. And if we are, that person goes away. You know?
I absolutely agree. And you're right. I mean, again, I said that as like an impatient trial watcher who's like looking at my calendar, waiting for things to come up. But you're right. I mean, thank goodness there's a system in place, and
Yeah.
we want both sides to have all the information that they need to go to trial.
Somebody asked
There
me
was
how Stevie Nicks was. I went a week and a half ago. Amazing, like flawless, perfect.
Analytical Blarney, AB, who is both part of STS Nation and an alibier, just said, Gigi really doesn't sleep. Guys, adore you, Gigi.
Well,
Aw.
thank you so much. I've been reading all your sweet comments. I really appreciate it. You guys are the best.
I'm sorry. All right, guys, if you have any more questions, any personal questions, we'll give it like 5 more minutes and then I think we're gonna wrap.
Yeah, I'm gonna go love on my little bit. Make sure she's
Yeah.
good. Then I gotta catch up
Um,
with Rust because they've been going. Well, they started at noon, so yeah. I'm glad this is wrapping up. Uh,
okay. Annie K is asking, Gigi, do you know about any more jail tapes with Donna since her arrest? They were very helpful.
yeah, so I've heard there's 100 more hours, but that's not anything I can confirm. I'm trying to get those. We will see what's up, and, I'm hoping, yeah, because I wanna hear what they gotta say. And then somebody asked, "Did Stevie do Leather and Lace?" She did. She had her vocal coach that she's had since 1995 come out. Normally doesn't do it. And by the way, she wants to move here to Greenville. I'm like, "Girl, house for me right next door for sale. We could be neighbors." Oh my gosh. If Stevie Nicks was my neighbor, she'd probably get like a stalking thing against me. I'd be like, "What's up, girl?"
All right, let me see if we have any more questions here.
Lots of sidebars. Yeah, Russ, the defense and the state got to going back and forth so much that now when there's an objection, the judge automatically makes them just come up to the sidebar. It's crazy. She did do
Super
Leather and Lace, yeah.
Super Planner Girl is asking me the color of the room I'm in. I think it's supposed to be white. Does it not look white? It looks like creamish greenish.
It looks greenish to me. It looks like a seafoam green, and it's very, very, very pretty.
It's
I
so
like that
funny
color.
because
It's very subtle.
in real life, I think it's cream or white. So nothing too exciting. Okay, hold on. There was another question or two. This is from T-Pain, one of our mods.
Yes, she did do Gypsy. That's like my theme song for life is or no, Gold Dust Woman. Oh man, they're all good. But yeah, she did do Gypsy. Landslide makes me cry every time she does it live. I've seen her twice. Me and my girl saw her last year in North Carolina. Then she added this stop here, which is 5 minutes from my house. But like, yeah, I always cry with Landslide. That song, as I've gotten older, hits me hard. Hits me in a very different way. Having kids that are getting older, I'm just like a blubbering mess. And yeah.
And going back here, I think this is okay. Charlie Barrow earlier said that
Mm.
she was here. as a hidden gem. I think that's what they call themselves. Lauren Matias is from Hidden True Crime. But she has a question for you. So do you think Melanie's is going to sabotage testifying again by claiming she watched reports on the case? Will the judges allow that again?
No, the judge actually mentioned in a hearing, the last hearing that Chad had, one of the concerns that they had about streaming the trial, which, Lori's wasn't, this will be live streamed, is that potential witnesses could say, I've watched to get out of testifying. Judge Boyce said he would have no problem compelling them to testify. But I don't think they really need Melanie's, honestly. I think that with Lori, what I heard, and again, this is just rumblings there at trial, was that they didn't feel she was reliable as a witness. Melanie's really clung to Lori. She lost her mom at a young age. And I don't know that they felt like they could really get solid testimony out of her. Her husband testified. I saw her in the courthouse, but I don't know that she'll be needed at Chad's so much as she was needed at Lori's. And I really think maybe that she's needed more for the attempt on Brandon there in Arizona, where Lori is now waiting her trial for that, and then the murder of Charles. I think that they have enough evidence in JJ and Tylee and Tammy's case there in Idaho that they don't really need her. I don't know. I just feel like if they didn't make her testify at Lori's, with that being her niece, they're probably not gonna, she may be on the witness list, but she's not gonna get out of it by not watching. And the judge made that clear. I just think more in Brandon's case, because that was her ex-husband, and only a handful of people knew where he had moved to, and she was one. So, and then Alex Cox is outside of his house a few days later with a barrel of a gun sticking out of a window. So, that one.
All right, guys. Well, we are going to wrap. New York Patriot lady, she's asking if I am Native American. No, I'm not. I'm Latina. My mom was born in San Salvador in El Salvador. My dad was born in Guatemala. So they are Central American. I was born here in the U.S., so I'm a firstborn generation American. I am one of 4 kids, but I am very much Central American. My kids and Joel and everyone has been back. And something really cool about that, if you don't know your Central American geography, these countries are teeny, teeny, tiny compared to many countries in the rest of the world. And we have a lot of random viewers that constantly, chime in here and there. And randomly, Joel has been like, oh, where are you from? Or he'll respond to their email. And someone's like, oh, I'm from Guatemala. I'm from El Salvador. And I'm really excited because someone last month who won the giveaway won in El Salvador. So I am sending her a care package from STS to El Salvador, which is pretty cool. So I'm very,
awesome.
very excited about that. I also just want to remind everyone, because someone is asking what the channel is that covers the trials. We do have a second channel. It is called Surviving the Survivor Trials. You can go to our main page, youtube.com/surviving the survivor or surviving the survivor. And if you go right under our name, it should say second channel, or you should see a link there. If you click on that, it'll take you to our other channel. Please remember to subscribe. We are going to have more trials airing there. And again, if you guys are interested in the Vallow story, please remember to tune in tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Joel is going to be interviewing Vallow juror number 18. It is going to be a live show, a one-on-one interview to discuss all things Vallow and what that means for Chad Daybell as his trial approaches. That's April 1st. A very, very special shout out and thank you to Gigi for being here, for taking the time to hang out with us, for being so gracious always. In case you guys do not know this, Gigi shared all of her audio tapes with us when she was covering the Charlie Adelson tapes, not because she had to. She was like, hey guys, let's work together and do this. So I just want to say thank you to you, Gigi. We really do appreciate
always
working with you.
Yeah.
We love you. You're awesome. You're amazing. And if you're not following her, you should be, because she does great breakdowns of all the cases that she's covering.
Thank you so much. I love you guys too.
All right, everyone, please remember to hit the like button on both of our pages. Subscribe on both of our pages if you haven't, and we'll be in touch soon. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.